One. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Of Like Minds video podcast. I have a super special guest here today, Miss Anna Sarao. Anna Sarao, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my God. And Anna, you and I have known each other for a long time and in the dance community. And you are regarded and seen highly by so many, including myself. And so this is really special for me. And again, I just want to say thank you for your time today.
Yay, I'm excited.
Let's get into it. So Anna, just starting off first, if you can just talk a little bit about your upbringing and where you grew up and what that was like.
Oh, yeah, we're going all the way back. So
Mm-hmm.
I immigrated here from the Philippines. My dad was in the Navy, and our family always kind of like loved to dance. My dad, would kind of teach me dances when I was young. But, when we moved here, we moved to like kind of like predominantly like Filipino, Black, Mexican neighborhood. And so all I can really remember was watching like Soul Train, watching What's Happening, like TV shows. And then my babysitter would be like, yeah, Anna, dance, and I'd be like, yeah, I didn't know what it was, but I just knew that, wow, if I do this, like people are happy, So I didn't know what it was called, but the energy, I loved the happiness that it brought me when I was little. And so as I got older, like hip hop was always on the radio before even it was called hip hop. It was just called rap, and I was so impressed because, mind you, being an immigrant, I didn't even speak English. So I was quiet as fuck, but I would have like all kinds of thoughts in my head. And so I would listen to these like lyrics of these rappers and be like, wow, that's so cool. They're singing, but they're talking. And they're like, sometimes they would be like bragging, sometimes they would be angry. And I just really kind of like related. Something about that was cool to me. Like, wow, they're so cool what they do and how they sound. I loved rap music, and I never even like thought of it as, oh, I'm Filipino, I'm not, supposed to, whatever. It was just music and I was drawn to it. And I remember my dad one day in junior high. I grew up in National City. I went to Zamorano, which was a performing arts, creative arts school, and then Bell Junior High, and
That's
then
right. Oh
yes,
my God.
and then Morse High School. So that's in the hood, y'all. It was in Skyline, 6905 Skyline Drive. Yeah, but my parents, we lived in a house. We were like in a suburb in the hood, whatever. But so yeah. So anyways, I mean, I always gravitated towards that music. Black music. I had posters of New Edition and LL Cool J, Run DMC, Houdini, like all of it, all on my wall. And I remember one day in junior high, my dad was like, oh, why are you doing that? Don't you know the blacks will be mad at you? And I didn't understand why he was like upset or concerned for him. I was like, Dad, I learned this from Tanika. What are you talking about? And it was so funny because back in the day, like it was really different. Like I grew up where America was a place that was taught to me was a melting pot, was taught to me that, oh, you could share other people's cultures, other people's music. And, we were all kind of like watching all this MTV stuff together. There wasn't any boundaries, any lines. And I honestly didn't grow up with Filipino culture. I didn't know how to tinikling. Like, what I'm saying? Like that wasn't predominant. I mean, I still ate Filipino food. I still spoke Tagalog because my grandma raised us,
Yeah.
My grandma ended up moving here to America so she could babysit us, kind of thing. But I was pretty introverted, and dance was really how I learned to express myself and how I made friends. Like I just knew that it was easy. Like, oh, if I went to a dance and I just started, doing stuff, people started, oh wow, yeah, teach me that. I mean, that's how you made friends. Hey, you teach me that, and then I'll teach you this.
So this like learning.
Yeah.
This learning of dance, was this like kind of like on the playground, or just like, obviously this is a little bit different from the conventional way, like nowadays a lot of people are kind of learning more, even with hip hop, asterisk there, but learning that in the studio. And so your experience is a little bit more outside the studio and outside the classroom in terms of dance. Your initial So what was
Yeah.
that? What was that like?
We would be at school and we used to have dances at school and sometimes even at lunch, people would be like, we still had little groups, like, there was Earthbound and, I forgot that, they had all these like special names and there would be battles in the cafeteria, kind of thing. And so it was just something the kids did. And that's how I thought of hip hop. Like, oh, that's just something the kids did in the neighborhood growing up. And even though I wasn't a battler, because mind you, I wasn't the Anna that you know now. I was very quiet, very shy, super studious because my parents were, like every Filipino parent, like go to school, you better get good grades. But I couldn't help it. I mean, I just really loved to dance, and apparently was pretty good at it because I mean, I kept getting invited to learn, and nobody ever told me, oh, you can't do this,
Mm.
yeah. So I just, yeah, I would just learn with my friends at school and during lunch. And sometimes we would make up routines. And it was so funny. Okay, so a routine was like forever 8 count repeating. You would do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Other side. 1, 2, 3. Like the
Yeah.
moves were so repetitive. If you want to get fancy, you do it to the back, you do it to the ground. I don't even remember all of their names, but yeah, we used to have Reebok and Cabbage Patch and Running
Mm-hmm.
Man,
Mm-hmm.
but there were some that were like routines I remember learning, but yeah, you just learned it from your friends, and we would copy music videos. Honestly, Yo MTV
Mm.
Raps was so popular back in the day, so there were these groups that I remember, like Heavy D had dancers. This
Mm-hmm.
guy named Kwame had dancers. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Salt and
Mm-hmm.
Pepper had dancers. Like the ones that had dancers, those are the ones I was really like, oh, I want to watch them. And we would copy
Mm.
all the routines, kind of thing, and practice them at school. Yeah, yeah. And even artists, like Black artists that were going into pop, like Michael Jackson and Janet
Mm-hmm.
Jackson, like they were really like crossing over and building like this dance culture, because music videos were so intricate, like the choreography. It wasn't just um, like simple movement, but you could tell like, wow, they can dance just as good as the dancers, So
Mm.
it really drew your eye. It drew me to it. I don't know, something about it. It was just like, oh, I want to copy that. I want to be like that. That looks cool. And I like this. I love Black music, R&B, all of it, rap, uh, just really like dope funk music. All of it was cool to me.
Absolutely. Well, if you can just stepping aside from dance for a little bit, Anna, you talking, I didn't even realize that you actually went to Zamorano. I used to live actually on Casey Street, so down the street from Zamorano. And so if you can just talk about the progression of that, going to Zamorano, then going to Bell for middle school, and then going to Morse for high school. If you can just talk about the differences between the schools and just your overall personal experience going K through 12, essentially.
Yeah, so amazing. Before I went to Zamorano, I was at this elementary school called Loma Verde, and there weren't a lot of Filipinos.
Mm.
It was predominantly white kids and Mexican kids, and so they would be like, "What are you?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm Filipino." And they're like, "What is that? Like
Mm.
Japanese?" And I used to get bullied. I kid you not.
Mm.
The boys would try to fight me, and I would try to like, oh, like dodge it, or
Yeah.
kind of like just run from them, whatever. And then, so anyways, we moved, and my parents put me into Zamorano Creative Arts School. And there, for the first time in my life, I saw so many Filipinos. I was like, wow, all these kids look like me.
Mm.
And everyone wanted to be my friend. So it was weird. It was like going from like, oh, nobody cares about you. Who the fuck are you, fob?
Mm.
Into like, oh, hey, you're a new girl. Do you want to sit by me? And it was just kind of like
Mm.
interesting for me, the culture of it. And in these classes there, I always got put in gate classes because I kid you not, I was so quiet, I was super smart. All I ever did was homework and read. So they put me in these classes called gifted and talented education.
Mhm.
And so yeah, a lot of these classes would be combined with older grades, older kids. We would do art, and I realized that's probably why I am so like, I love art making, like collaging, whatever, painting.
Mhm.
And also I remember in sixth grade, my teacher like saw something, some kind of potential in me, and she put me in like sixth grade Senate, and that was the first leadership position I ever had. And I was like,
Mm.
yeah, but I never really. I was like, I always questioned it, and I was like, why are you gonna make me do this? And I always doubted it. I never really put much effort into it. It was kind of like she just made me do it, and I never saw myself as leader. I never did, you know. But I guess because I don't know, she saw something in me, and whatever, it just kind of was like that, like over the years.
Well, what did that do? What did that do to you mentally in terms of being put in a leadership position without asking for it, and then two, that environment of Zamorano being so hospitable, and that culture shock of like, whoa, like there's a lot of people here that look like me and that
Mm,
want to like befriend me as opposed to bullying me. So two-part question.
yeah. So I was very surprised. It was surprising to have people want to be my friend. Like these were like, I guess I had low self-esteem because I would look at these girls like, wow, they're so pretty. Why do they want to be my friend? You know, like it was really crazy to see that in like sixth grade. And also I felt pressured. Like my teachers, my class, I always kind of like stood out in a weird good way, but I never would accept that about myself. So I would really like kind of like I was supposed to give a speech and I didn't do it, you know, because I was like, that's not me. You know, I felt so much pressure, you know.
Mm.
And so my teacher ended up picking a poem for me to read for a sixth grade Senate. And why do I remember this is just because you're asking me. I never ever talk about this. I've never spoken about this, but yeah, it was weird for me to have that attention. But also I felt like it helped it helped kind of normalize me being an immigrant here in the country and give me some kind of confidence, you know. Yeah.
Do you think that if you hadn't gone to Zamorano and you maybe stayed at Loma Verde, you said,
Yeah, Loma Verde.
do you think, what do you think the differences may, I mean, what
Oh
if could have?
man, I would I would have been so fucking different. Like I was a fucking nerd. Like in Loma Verde, I'm serious. I would get picked for groups last. I was quiet. Nobody ever fucking heard my voice. They didn't know who I was. I remember third, fourth grade just thinking like, oh, I have the identity of being smart, but I just always kind of like was socially, I felt socially outcast because I mean it was so
Mm,
different. I was getting bullied all damn day, you know, and I didn't really, I didn't really, I don't remember how, like having friends there either, you know.
mm.
It was just a weird space to be in, but I also felt like, oh, okay, I can handle it. I guess this is just what school is like, you know, kind of thing.
Man, I mean, that's, I mean, anytime you're different from the pack, right? You get looked at and you get chastised for that and you get picked on. And so it kind of just shows how important an environment is, especially at that age. You just talking about you mentally clicking, and that probably helped you learning inside and outside the classroom too.
Mm-hmm.
So shout out to Zamorano for giving you that platform. And now kind of transitioning to your middle school, I had
Yeah.
a cousin that I had several cousins that went to Bell, and at the time it was tough. And I don't know if it was similar to when you were there, but if you can just talk about that experience going to Bell and middle school being a really awkward, real like age, just kind of starting transitioning, maybe going through puberty, maybe just questioning a lot of things mentally and physically. So, what was that transition like going from Zamorano to Bell?
Oh, yeah. And that was like my freaking adolescent, like puberty, teenage years.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely awkward, but I don't know. I think I remember that as like really good times because I was starting to make friends. I was starting to, I guess, be popular, if you can say that. You know, I was,
Mm.
and I was, I mean, I had all kinds of friends. I had black friends, I had white friends, I had Mexican friends, you know, and it was really, because I was in these gate classes. You know, it was like a higher level of study, and yeah, I mean, I just really liked. I liked all the people that I was hanging out with. I liked the activities. I liked being social. But then also on the downside of it, like my parents like didn't. It was hard to acculturate. Like my parents have Filipino values, and like their values are super strict. So I couldn't have talk. I couldn't be talking on the phone. I
Mm.
couldn't go out with my friends and go to their house. It was weird. Like, you know, even kind of like dating and boys. Like I couldn't have a boyfriend. And really like I just, oh yeah, I don't know, you're hella good. You're making me remember. I did have depression, and I did have attempts. I attempted, like I slit my wrist at one point. And that actually turned out to be a good thing because the counselor ended up talking to me and my mom. And that was the first
Mm,
time that I got to tell my mom that, hey, I'm a good daughter. I don't know why you're always making me feel like I'm bad, you know?
wow.
Yeah. And so the counselor helped to facilitate that conversation. And that kind of changed my mom. I think like she didn't have, you know how it is, they just didn't have a way to understand you. There's such a
Hmm.
cultural gap, you know?
Yeah.
And so anyway, she kind of like chilled out a little bit on the like yelling and screaming and making me feel bad kind of thing.
Hmm.
And so yeah, that was the place where I was at, where I knew I was supposed to be super smart. I knew I was supposed to be some kind of teacher or whatever I was supposed to do with my life. Um, and I was still kind of socially kind of like trying to acculturate to America. Yeah.
And I mean, at that time too, we didn't have the social media that we do nowadays. And so
Mm,
you being literally, kind of isolated from like being able to talk to other people about this. I guess just that moment of having that conversation with your mom, that must have been super powerful. One, to finally get off your chest, but two, like you said, to let her know what the hell you were going through.
yeah.
And just that difference of thinking, because, our parents, they see things a little more like it's right or wrong,
Mhm.
whereas things are a little bit more gray area with us. And so, yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I didn't know. And I mean, that's gotta be tough, especially, you didn't have, I don't know if dance was still prevalent in your life at this point because you didn't
Oh,
have
always.
access
Yes.
to access to talking to people about that. So how did dance kind of play a role in your life, kind of, now you're in middle school, kind of going to high school? How are you still keeping that up?
I was always dancing, always. My parents were pissed. They would be like, why don't you stop dancing? You need to wash the dishes or you need a vacuum,
Mm. Oh, it was
But I was
nonstop, like 24.
nonstop, 24/7. I mean, like I would see videos and I would literally memorize whole routines. Like whole routines, I could do it.
Oh,
I would
wow.
be fucking putting on concerts in the garage. Like that's where you dance. I had a radio. You used to have cassettes and you would tape the song, and you would play back the song. And then I would just redo the whole like music video in the
Oh,
garage. And my parents were always pissed. Like, they're like, why aren't you doing your chores? Why don't you do something important or something like that? And yeah, my parents were super pissed. They were always like, oh, did you wash the dishes? What are you doing? It's crazy.
so at this point, it was still kind of on your own within just the communities at school, kind of outside in the neighborhood, wherever it may be. It wasn't in a formal setting in terms of like studio or in a classroom setting. When did that kind of come into
Kevin,
play?
Kevin, you want me to drop you some knowledge? I'll drop you
Absolutely,
some knowledge
absolutely. That's what we're here
right
for.
now. I'll drop you some knowledge. No studios taught hip hop. No studios wanted to teach hip hop. It was not looked at as a real dance. It was a dance for poor people. It was just like, oh, I would be like, oh, doing this, and oh, what style of dance do you do? Oh, hip hop. Oh, well, why don't you take jazz? You need to take a real class,
Yeah.
And like all the stuff that we would do, even if it was in music videos, it was just for fun, and it was just like something that you did. And you did it in the neighborhood to make friends. It was not a career. It was never yeah, it was just like for poor people. I don't know how else to say it, but it was for poor people.
Well, one, I mean, just you knowing that at that age, and knowing how resilient you were in terms of just still always doing it. I guess if you can maybe take us through the mentality of how are you just able to continue with that, because you have your parents questioning you, you have people on the outside like, yo, why don't you do this? But something so powerful about this art form, and specifically we're talking about hip hop and dance. Like, what if you can just describe to us like what that feeling was and why it was so powerful that you were able to look over everyone else that was deterring you from continuing to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's the music. The music. just kind of gave me a sense of freedom. Like
Mm.
from whatever it was, if I was fighting with my parents, if I was struggling in school, if I didn't fit in, whatever, it kind of gave me some sense of this is my little private space. And then if I was at school, like I said, it was the only way I could connect to other people. I didn't have like my personality traits of like, oh yeah, that girl, oh, she's so fine. And oh, wow, he's the class clown. It wasn't that, I didn't have none of that at all. It was just like my only thing to know how to do to make friends was, oh, can you teach me that dance? And that it was really ingrained in me is like, okay, socially, this is what this is for. Like it was connecting. It connected me to the world and it connected me to myself. Yeah.
Mm. I love that. When at what point, what was the first studio that you kind of got involved with and like formally like taking class? Like what was your intro to dance in that
Yeah.
sense?
Okay, wait. No, we even before a studio, okay? Because this is how weird this was. So I'm like going past high school, kind of getting prepared to go to college. And I remember being pissed because my other friends, they were kind of more well off than I was.
Mhm.
So they were going to universities. They were going to UCI, UCSD. And my mom said, we don't have enough money for you to go to college like that. So you're going to have to go to Mesa College. And I was like, oh, I'm such a fucking loser and I hate my life. Why do we have to be poor and I have to go to this poor school? I hated it. I really remember being so negative about it.
Mm.
And funny thing, right? Like I'm walking around Mesa College. I'm just in general GEs and I hear this music and it's hip hop. And I'm like, the hell? Like I'm walking by like who's playing hip hop music at school, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And it was a white lady and she was teaching a hip hop dance class. And I was like, nah, I swear to God, I stood in the doorway and I hated so much. I was such a hater. I was like, no, man, you can't do that. You can't teach hip hop in college. That's dumb. You can't teach. What do y'all know about? You don't know it. No,
Mm-hmm.
I just no way, no. And I remember just standing there and just hating on her for a good like 15 minutes. And then I was like, oh shoot, this white lady can dance. She actually she knew what she was doing, like her body, like the mechanics, and she had kind of like a soul, in it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Who you
I,
talking about, Anna? Who you talking about?
I'm talking about Angie Bunch,
Come on now. Angie Bunch.
Angie Bunch, the creator of Culture Shock,
Mm-hmm.
both the dance team and later the dance center.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was tripping out, and I was just like, oh, and mind you, now I'm kind of cockier in my 20s. So in my
Mm-hmm.
20s, I was like, I'm gonna enroll in that class. I'm gonna show her. you know it's so funny. And also though back then it wasn't called hip hop, it was called like cardio hip hop or cardio American street dance. They were trying to find a name for it, they didn't know what it
Mm.
was. And even I used to belong to a gym, I used to belong to like Bally's Total Fitness
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
off Sweetwater,
Yep. 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 Yep.
yeah. And even there they started teaching these classes, but they didn't call it hip hop, they called it cardio funk.
That's good. That's gonna get the people in those classes. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, I
yeah,
can get this sweat
yeah.
on. That's what's
Uh-huh.
gonna get. That's what's gonna sell.
Uh-huh. But basically it was hip hop class. You just dance, party dances all for
Mm-hmm.
an hour, and then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the instructor would throw in squats or something.
Yeah.
But so then yeah, all of a sudden I started seeing that, wow, whatever I grew up with, it's following me, like,
Mm.
oh, now I'm seeing it in like these organizations in college, in fitness places. That's kind of weird. Okay, yeah.
How did that affect you? One, you got to tell us about what the first class was Angie was like, and number two, you talking about initially having that negative mentality going into college. Talking about like I'm poor and then having to stay at home because of financial limitations. If you can just talk about one, the first time being in Angie's class, and two, kind of how that sparked and kind of maybe changed your mentality or maybe gave you a little bit more of an uplifting feeling like, yo, this might be a really good thing for me.
Yeah. So it was crazy because the reason why I was hating so much is because I was like, you cannot, how are you going to teach people, random people, how to love this? There's no way. Like,
Mm,
it's not just, because to me, I was like, you can't just do that. I don't know. That's what was going on in my head. I was like,
yeah.
there's so much more. We grew up with it like kids for years, and like we had battles, we had these undergrounds, we had these parties. Like, are they going to teach that at school, like at college, for college credit? Like, I didn't, my mind was not understanding how a curriculum was going to form around how we just, to me, it was like I took ownership of it. It was like a
Yeah.
memory of my life kind of a thing. But as soon as I started taking it, I realized I was learning something else. Like, Angie, she's such a good teacher, right? So I was learning communication, body mechanics, how to demonstrate so that other people could get it, could
Mm,
learn, and breaking down movements. So I really, it was like, it was weird. I was picking up another skill kind of without realizing it, because the dance came just natural for me. That was like easy A every semester.
right.
and and then she had this class for dance performance where you could perform in the Apollo, the campus theater, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so that even took it to another level for me. And it was like all the stuff that I had been doing in the garage as a kid was now, I'm now learning the skills behind it,
Yeah.
like how to block, how to stage, like costuming, lighting, you
Mm,
know? And it was a trip, because then I was like, after that, I was addicted. I was enrolling in that class every semester, whether I graduated or not.
yeah.
I was just addicted and I think also because all of a sudden, coming from a place where I had low self-esteem to being in a place where I was good at this. Because mind you, she saw that in me and she asked me to be her assistant. Like,
Mm,
so she basically took me under her wing and I would team teach the class with her. And at times, if she wasn't there, I would sub the entire class by myself. Now, think about that. I'm an immigrant, I'm Filipino, I'm a woman, right? Leading
powerful.
a class with no
Powerful.
degree, no degree.
Yeah.
This is like amazing, and it really gave me some kind of confidence, some kind of empowerment. Um, and yeah, and that really, I mean, whereas I didn't accept myself as a leader before in dance, I felt that presence for sure. I sat in that, like, yes.
I mean, that's powerful, like what you just said, and having to lead the class, and this is again you finding yourself in a leadership role. You didn't really ask for it. You just kind of, they Angie saw something in you, and she saw something in you. I don't how into class, like was this maybe like a semester in, a half a year? Do you remember like how
Yeah.
soon was this kind of like you started subbing and helping?
Yeah. I want to say it must have been just like a semester or two, because she would give me homework. She would be like, here, I want you to take this song and I want you to count how many eight counts are in the bridge, how many eight counts are in the chorus, you know? And so it was teaching me how to think already, how I can translate like music to eight counts. And like
Yeah.
I don't know, it was just like, it was cool. And yeah, I mean, I never had anyone invest in me like that,
Mm,
like, and like in difference in Zamorano, I mean, my teacher suggested it to me, but she didn't really mentor me. She didn't even really tell me like what it was about. It
yeah.
was just felt like pressure. Whereas with Angie, it was kind of just felt like natural. Yeah.
Mm. And this beginning cardio hip hop, whatever class, whatever it was named at the time, I believe we had other friends that ended up joining this class too. Eventually, if correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
There's other people, like I'm
Oh my
talking
God.
OG Culture Shock. Um, if you can just talk about those people and like people from their beginning too.
Yeah. No, this was the funnel of all kinds of street dance, like the top tier talent. So Sherman was in there.
Jeremy
Sherman danced for
Shabate.
Destiny's
Mm-hmm.
Child. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mary J. Blige. Sammy and Julie Bell.
Sammy
We were
Julie.
all in there. Rainin was in there. Eddie
Rainin,
Styles.
Jabbawockeez.
Jabbawockeez was in there.
Jabbawockeez.
Kevin,
Mm-hmm.
when Kevin took classes, Darky.
KB.
Yeah, yeah, he
Kevin
took
Brewer.
a few classes. He wasn't in there for years, but he took a few. And
Darky as well. Darky as well.
Dark, yeah, Vanessa was her assistant
Mm-hmm.
before me.
Mm.
Lennon, like all the Urban Effects, Jimrod, Charmaine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, that was like where it was at. If you were a dancer, you were in Angie's class. Like all the top tier San Diego people were in there. Yeah.
And when did, if we can just get to this era of your career and just talking about, this class, humble beginnings, and talking about Culture Shock San Diego, and that transition. For one, when did it happen for you? Two, how did you even go about this? Like, was it audition? Was it invite? Like, what was that like during that time?
Yeah, so she told me to audition. She was like, "Yeah, I think you should come and audition." And mind you, I'd never known what culture shock was. I didn't
Mm.
know what an audition was. And that first year, I was blown away. Like, I came into like a music video, like space, like 200 people, um, going over choreography, like industry people leading warm-ups and like breaking into groups of four, and it was overwhelming for me. And mind you, that first one, like my self-esteem, my focus wasn't in place. I remember getting to second cut and then walking off. I just was not in the right mindset. I just walked off. And it was funny because then all of a sudden I had to face Angie still, and I enrolled in her summer
Mm-hmm.
class. And she didn't make me feel bad about it. She just treated it like, okay, it's just learning. But one of her directors from Culture Shock Vegas, Sean Dean, thank you, Sean Dean. Sean Dean was watching class and he was like, Angie, how come she's not on scholarship? You need to put her on scholarship. And so Angie was like, yeah, you're right. And so, so that's how I got free classes after that, and it
Yeah.
kept me tied into culture shock until I made it like maybe my third audition. Because I did audition one more time in Culture Shock LA just as practice.
Okay.
And I didn't make it then. And then the third time, like I was ready. I brought like tricks, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I know how to work the audience. I mean, I have picked my outfit, like, I was ready. I was ready that third time. Yeah.
Oh my God. Um, what year is this? If
Oh yeah.
first year in Culture Shock, if you can just take us to that.
So Culture Shock started in 1993 and I made it in
Mm-hmm.
1996. And check this, Sherman, they took him on as an alternate. He wasn't even on the team. They only picked four of us. It was me, Julie, Chris, and Sherman. My best friend, Chris, our best friend.
Chris.
Braswell.
Okay.
I don't know if you knew him, but yeah, he was our best friend. And then Sherman was like an alternate. Yeah.
And you can just talk about, and we'll compare and contrast to what we see now, but
Mm-hmm.
what the team aspect and environment was like during your initial tenure, at least those first few years in the late to mid 90s. If you can just talk about what the camaraderie and what that environment was like with Culture Shock. It was
Yeah.
special.
Oh yeah. See, so here's the secret, right? Like on the outside, they're doing amazing, awesome things. They're teaching after school programs, nonprofits,
Mm-hmm.
um, different races, different backgrounds. But once I got to the fucking first rehearsal, I felt like shit. I felt like crap. Like they taught us 3 routines in a day, and my director was so hard. He was
Who was your
so
director at the time? Who was the
his
director?
name is Lennon.
Okay.
Lennon.
Mm-hmm.
Lennon talked shit to me so bad. He goes, "Oh my God, you suck. Why did we pick you?" And he,
But that's normal though. That's normal,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Back then, you could just like straight talk, and it hurt my feelings. But I remember going, "Oh, I had that in me." I was like, "I'm gonna show you one day. I'm gonna fucking show you." And he would talk shit to me it was like clockwork. He would be like, "Yeah, Julie's so much better than you. I don't know why we picked you." And it was almost like, are you playing mind games with me? Well, what the fuck is this? I thought you were supposed to like self-worth and dignity, respect, but in rehearsal, they would like drill you and wear you down and just like here, like Lennon would fuck with you. He'd be like, oh, did you learn that right side? Now learn everything to the left. And I'll be like, wait, what?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
there was no handouts. You had to work for that shit. So I remember my plan every day, because they would give me critique and feedback, and I didn't get it. I didn't see what they were seeing. So I started to videotape myself. I would go home, I would practice, I would videotape myself, and then I would give myself notes. And that was just a normal way. I would just do it over and over and over. And then one day in master class, like I knew, I was like, it would usually after class, the team runs the piece, you know, kind of a thing. And I made sure I stood front and center, and I was like, oh, you're gonna get it. I'm gonna fucking show you. So yeah, I killed that fucking routine, whatever, whatever it was, he gave me props after that. He was like, you know what, everyone, I have 2 words for you. Ah, nah. Yeah.
Wow.
And he left me alone after that. He never fucked with me again. Yeah.
Well, I mean, once again, just that mentality, and I think obviously, the world is evolving and changing, and I think, there's a certain way to go about things, and even in my leadership roles, I've definitely overstepped at times, and I've had to learn the hard way, similar to like how Lennon kind of treated you and probably many others at that time. If you can just talk about, I guess the pros and cons of that, because yes, you were able to thrive and to prove him wrong, but also, it's not always, all butterflies with those kinds of things. You're probably dealing with a lot of anxiety being in a new environment and not having the best support from your leaders. So if you can just talk about the pros and cons of like what the environment was like before, with it being so different now, like just being so blunt and having to have that thick skin. If you could talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, like back then, the tough love is a real thing. So the pros about it is I really felt like they were trying to prepare you for industry. Like in industry work, it is competitive, it is cutthroat. I mean, there's nothing soft about it. And if you were able to take these criticisms or feedback or whatever, I really felt like it was to your benefit, right? Because you're dancing, and I noticed my dancing like skyrocketed, after this first year of being on the team. So I did find, even though he was kind of like, just Lennon, just kind of abrasive sarcasm, that was how he communicated.
Yeah.
um he still knew what he was talking about. He still knew his shit. The cons about it, yeah, it doesn't, it kind of is confusing if you look up to them and you have this idealized picture of what a team is and what a director is like. And um and the cons about it is like you start to feel kind of like personal about it, like you take everything personal, and it is kind of, it hurts your feelings if you let it, if you continue to think that way. um and would that kind of work now? No, it wouldn't. Like, I think now, the generations now with social media has really taught us to look for validation outside. Now, in my story, I told myself I had to go inside and say, no, he's going to see that I can dance. I knew inside I could dance. I just knew that whatever he was looking at, he wasn't seeing it yet, whatever it was. But inside, I went in and I went, no, I know I can dance. Fuck you. But yeah, but this generation, the generations now, we're trained to look for that outside. All of the answers, all of the likes, all of the hearts, who I am, what I'm gonna do. You're looking for it outside. So no, this would not work now. Everyone now is very sensitive, and it's just a different world, different time that we live in.
I mean, you hit it right on the head there. I think kind of coming, a little bit later than you, but in that similar era, like years ago. It's so weird to say that. It is a very different time, and I think up until still dance is still very much a part of your life now, and whether that social media portrays that, I know it's played a huge role in your life and still continues to do that. I want to get into kind of jumping around here. I want to get into. I know there was a time kind of recently where you were kind of going through it. If you're okay to talk about this, but I know that you weren't able to dance for a bit. Almost, I guess, dance was kind of taken away from you in a sense, and I think to a much lesser degree that's kind of happening to a lot of us right now. But if you can just talk about what that's like to have something you love so much and that's played an integral role in your life like taken away from you and having to deal with that and really just having to focus on what life is throwing at you and like I don't have this refuge to like before. So if you can just talk about that whole experience.
Yeah. So it's happened twice in my life. The first time I went through a super deep depression because my sister was raped and I had like trauma in my family. So I won't go into detail because I know it can be really hard, but basically I ended up being isolated. I just started to like not care about all the dance stuff, like who the fuck cares, kind of thing. And I stopped going to class. I stopped being interested in it. I stopped kind of like talking to friends. And I knew because I couldn't even get out of bed, like I didn't even have the energy, to do anything, that I needed to go to like counseling or something, but I couldn't even afford that. So then finally, like my friend was like, maybe you should go to this women's group, and I don't know if somebody was praying for me or what, I don't know, but somebody said, yeah, I think it was Angela Moran was like, yeah, here, take this flyer and just go, check it out. And on a whim, I just kind of went, not even really thinking it was going to help. And it was really weird because all of the stuff that they were doing, it was just more like weird hippie stuff, like meditating and journaling.
Mm,
And I was like, what? How is this going to help me? But for some reason, I don't know. I kept going, and then it kind of was like it. Then it led to one thing versus another, and I continued to do it. I continued to make art. I continued to, write. I continued. Something was coming out. Whatever that negative energy was that was inside was coming out, right? And I guess that's what this space um, kind of taught me about how to heal myself, kind of a thing.
yeah.
Even though as weird as it is, it was very healing for me to be surrounded by that and to continue to do that. So I kept, yeah, I kept writing. I kept making letters and kept poems and collages. And then all of a sudden it turned into like a book, like almost like a story, And I was kept looking at it and I kept going, wow, this would be cool if this was a dance. And all of a sudden I was just kind of like in my mind, like kind of dreaming again, kind of like getting creative again, and like then I ended up writing a script, and I ended up writing a script for this traumatic thing that happened in my family and that was depressing for me. And then it was weird. It was like one day I was like, I think I want to make this into a play. And so I ended up, it took, honestly, it's not like it happened right away. It was a course of 5 years, you know? And I would, every time I would look at my book, I would beat myself up and go, see, you're such a loser. You said you were going to do this. And look, it's still sitting here. Oh, you never follow through. Look at this. You said that you were going to do this and shit's still sitting in the back of your car. So it's not like it happened right away, but somewhere through the years, I would just be open to, I guess, kind of like signs.
Yeah.
And one of them was this, it was something called Fringe Festival in San Diego,
Okay.
where it's like a whole like weekend long thing where artists can put on their own shows for discounted rates at venues.
Mm.
So I saw that and I thought, oh, wow, I think this is giving me a sign. And so I finally just jumped to do it. And I ended up auditioning my friends and, you know, they, I mean, I cast them to play the roles of the people in the play, and we put it on, and it was, it was so healing for me. It was really, really, really healing. And slowly I was able to kind of like get enough energy and interest in dance again, you know, because I just realized I was holding on to so much negative thoughts, so much pain, and so much trauma, and so much that shame that I thought about myself. Like, I thought, oh, well, who the fuck are you? You know, like, you know, I don't know if you ever done that, but I got into a space where I was just always constantly talking shit to myself, and it just
Yeah.
became, I thought it was my voice. You know, it just became normal, like over and over and over and over again. And anyways, this play helped because we had a Q&A afterwards, and I realized the entire audience could relate. The audience was asking questions about it, and family members, and my thought process. And I saw that other people had gone through this too. So it was a little container of healing for me, you know? And so, yeah, I was really, really grateful for that season, and it helped me to come back to dance. Yeah.
I love that. I think the time away from dance kind of helps propel us, and you being in the game for so long, I feel like you almost need the break, right?
Mm-hmm,
It's
mm-hmm.
you need the time away because it's a love-hate relationship. There's times whether it's the dance itself, or it's the dance and the space that requires, or the networks it brings you. There's so many things. And so I think, you know coming back to it after must have been, like you said, powerful, and having the script and writing had to help you go through that. um well, one, just thank you for sharing that. I actually I had no idea about any of that. I was just like, whoa, like I was not expecting that, and I love that. um Kind of jumping back and getting back to a little bit of culture shock, and I think just talking about the competition in terms of you just wanting to get better strictly because you want to get better, whether it's to prove to your peers or your directors, so on and so forth. Another thing too, whether people that are viewing and listening to this, they know or not, culture shock, to my knowledge, has always been an exhibition team.
Yeah.
And maybe talking about, I don't know if that ever kind of affected you mentally, but obviously there's a huge difference now with the dance community in terms of, if you're a competing team, prior to COVID, you're going to these competitions and these events, you're going to win, you're going to get that notoriety, you're going to put the art out there to get the following and whatnot. I feel like, whereas, if you're an exhibition team, it's more so like, we're just going to go into a little bit more casually, you're still going to train hard, but I've always noticed them, because I've done both. I've always noticed a little bit of a mentality shift. And if you can just talk about culture shock being an exhibition team, but then you kind of still functioning like you're a competing team, but in a different way, more so from within. If you can just talk about that dynamic of culture shock.
Yeah. And so, like I said, like it's interesting because we were one of the first like hip hop professional dance teams out there.
Mm-hmm.
So we started as an exhibition team. And as an exhibition team, you come with this mindset that, oh, well, we're so good, we don't need to compete. Like we're just kind of showcasing, you know? And for us, we also are very creative. Like the people on my team, I mean, we're a lot of us like are already competitive and push ourselves, especially b-boys, you know, like we're
Mm-hmm.
already like that from jump. So we would think as a team of what's never been done. That was our mindset. Okay, if we see it, you know, how can we make something that's super like, wow, nobody's ever seen this before, how can we take it another level, kind of thing. And I loved being around artists like that, and I was grateful, you know, like you could be in a room and all these people that love dance, that are passionate about their art, like it motivates you, you know, it's
Yeah.
freaking motivates you. um Competitive teams, like it depends. I mean, like I notice maybe now, I think the years after, like there was so much saturation after our ABDC years, our World of Dance years, you know.
Yeah.
And now the teams that are coming into play, they're like new teams, and they're not even just forming an identity, they're just going, what is dance, you know? So you have really different entry points, right? And so maybe they don't view dance the same, and they're really viewing it as, hey, if we win this competition, then, you know, this is going to be a status for us kind of a thing, you know? And most teams do, but honestly, the really, really, really top tier level teams, they're not just doing it for the win. They're not just doing it for that, you know, even though that is great. It
Yeah.
does, you know, just come with benefits. But like I said, like the top level teams already are coming with so many talented people, like as part of their team, you know, and only, I mean, you're gonna, in order to keep talented people, you're gonna have to challenge them. It's not just about
Mm,
winning, you know, it has
yeah.
to be more than that. It has to, they have to have a feeling of they're gonna improve their skills. They're gonna be creatively challenged. You know, there's other opportunities than just that. So yeah, it's different. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, I mean, I think you're hitting it on the head. I think that kind of it kind of leads me to another thing I wanted to ask you, and I think that being recently, and when I say recently, literally this year, uh, thank God we finally got rid of the term
Oh,
urban.
yeah.
And I think knowing you know how much of a purist you are with dance and hip hop, and me as well, and not just not just watching videos, and obviously it's a huge inspiration for all of us, but I mean like reading, like learning this shit and taking a lot of pride in that. And I don't know maybe your feelings towards that, but I've always felt like, especially how it was kind of hip hop was a base for a lot of us. I can say for you and I and a lot of other people. And then everyone kind of figured out their own movement. Then it kind of was kind of codified and was like, okay, we're going to call it this. So what were your feelings when that finally got put in check, and that finally, like, you saw in the masses of everyone being like, we're going to finally recognizing that. And the crazy thing is, I've always, in my classes I've promoted like, okay, it's called this, but I've always called my movement just movement. I never, like, I've never said like I'm teaching, unless I am teaching hip hop, like unless I am doing the Cabbage Patch, or I am doing the Smurf, or these things I've learned of the Chicken Head or whatever it may be. I'm not gonna say, I'm really not gonna say I'm teaching hip hop. Like, this is just movement. I've never been, so what did what did that mean to you, and how did you feel like once that term finally got lifted and finally got xed out?
Yeah, you know, it's a mixed bag of thoughts for me, to be
Yeah.
honest. I mean, I never really like connected to the term in the beginning when it was first being used. I was pretty confused. You know, I was kind
Mm-hmm.
of asking all my interviewees the same thing. And the reason why is because I thought, man, I don't want people to forget about the roots and the foundations of these styles, right? You know,
Yeah.
and I know that was not the intention of the Kinjas or Marin Keone or Sean, the people that were promoting the term. Um, so yeah, so I was kind of conflicted because yeah, I get it. They kind of had a reaction to being called out, and kind of thought, oh, okay, well, we should rename ourselves or rebrand it, and yeah, so they went with it, and then there was an announcement that it wasn't going to be that. So I kind of felt confused too. Like I felt like, oh wait, so what are all the kids going to call themselves? You know, I was kind of like, the kids have been calling themselves this, and now they're gonna, and keep it real, like I had dancers from Philippines like messaging me that same question, like, so what am I now? Do I still dance? Like they had an identity crisis, you know. Um, so then also, like I had been doing more talks, um, like on my Boba Talk podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And so even that kind of gave me a little bit more knowledge, because I think it's not just the label itself, but really the, I guess, the education of what makes this a style, what makes this something new. You know, it was never really clearly defined, right?
Yeah.
So I'm still kind of yeah, I'm still kind of having mixed emotions. That's the only way I could say it. I'm like, I'm glad uh, that for people that may have been offended, that it was a derogatory term. I'm glad that they no longer have to feel that way, and that
Hmm.
term doesn't describe the dance or us in that manner.
Yeah.
But maybe for those that are like, well, that's not what we wanted, and we really wanted more like clear definition of what this was, if it was a style. Yeah, I totally recognize that too. Yeah, I just felt like we that's what it is. I'm gonna go to social media discussion again. So
Yeah.
I felt like things are happening so fast. Like there could have been a little bit more thought into defining, into the explanation of thinking it through of what it was. But I feel like now with the press of a button, it's so easy to cause ripple effects and change culture, you know? And it happens with just like that. So I'm hoping that for the people that we look up to, that are influencers, that are leaders, that we will slow down and really consider the things that we are putting out there, for young people to follow. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. You just talked about it. You said slowing down and this pandemic giving us a chance, and a lot of the working artists who, you typically have to work, multiple gigs to kind of, to really stay afloat or thrive, right? And so if you can just talk about maybe one, what this time is serving those fellow artists, like this time to pause and to think and to educate and to learn and to apply yourself differently outside of dance. And then two, what you see for dance post COVID.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. So for my fellow like dance team leaders and artists, I mean, I see everybody on the hustle right now. We're all trying to figure out how this online thing is working.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are throwing events, some people
Yeah.
are still teaching online. Instagram live classes are a thing. Um, some people have just gone totally different other direction, and yeah, that I mean, some people are selling their clothes. I've seen people like just random stuff now. And the studios, I feel so bad for all of our
Yeah.
community spaces, because even with online, even with partial opening, it's not enough to
Yeah.
sustain. And
Yeah.
even for ML, I feel so bad that Sean, had to give up that dream, and it closed a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it is really hard to transition, and that's what I was telling you like earlier, is like, wow, the world is done. Like whatever we knew is done,
Yeah.
and we really need to think of a transition of what do we want to do now, because like COVID is still going to be around, and who is
Mm-hmm.
really going to take a vaccine like right now? That's still experimental.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So this is going to be with us for a while. And
Yes.
yeah, and I was talking to Kevin Sioko the other day. He's funny.
Uh-huh.
He goes, "Man, we're not even trying to fix it. We're not even trying to make it go away. We're just kind of like, hey, we got to live with it." And I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's basically it, So if we're going to continue to dance, definitely, guys, we're going to have to collab with like IT people, with technology people, because the only way we're communicating is online right now. We can't really be together, which is sad, because that is the foundation of our whole community, was being together, and these spaces, how are they going to exist if we're not allowed to gather? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and you can speak on both sides, but if you're talking from a student's perspective and talking from a teacher's perspective in the dance classroom, just talking about one, how COVID and the social distancing and the online learning, how that kind of affects our learning environment, negatively. If you could just
Yeah.
speak on that, both perspectives.
Yeah. Honestly, like the connection to people is why we started doing this, right? Why we
Yeah.
love being around each other and taking class. And now with being online, you only have like this much space to really dance. And there's no one, you can't hear people, like,
Yeah.
there's no interaction. It's hard to feel any kind of energy. And
Mm.
I have been taking from some friends, and I could tell that they're frustrated and unmotivated,
Yeah.
and they're doing their best, because in the Zoom, it doesn't translate like in class. Like
Yeah. Mm-mm.
people trying to ask questions or trying to ask you what are you doing, left arm, right arm. It just makes for a weird flow. And I just honestly have had to cut off and turn off a couple classes just because,
Yeah.
I learn super fast and I don't, it doesn't,
Yeah.
then I feel like I'm not getting anything out of it.
Mm.
So it is a very like awkward social experience to be online. And also like to be online, how are we going to translate like being present with everyone, the roar of the crowd and the energy and cheering and all that? That's that's like a different skill set. Like, like I was talking with Jabbawockeez and they're like, yeah, man, we had to hire a video production crew because it's basically like putting on your own news channel. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not the same as event planning. Like, it's different.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, you tell yeah, absolutely. And I mean event planning that's a whole other thing and a whole other thing that you've been involved with for a while. And if you can just talk and educate the kids and even, the old heads that have been around, but just Bustagroove. That then being if those of you that don't know what Bustagroove is, it's body rock now, but there was a time when it was Bustagroove. And so just talking about one, what drove you and what inspired you to create such an event, and just taking us through that process, and also telling us what your role is and role during those initial stages of
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Busty
so
Groove.
it all fits together because this is the first year of me directing Culture Shock in the year 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And also my best friend, Christopher, who I'd made it with, I made Culture Shock with in 1996. Well, he ended up passing away of cancer in
Yeah,
1999.
yeah,
So that really like shaped my identity and my worldview because I realized, man, you don't have a lot of time here on earth. And I promised myself, I was like, well, I'm going to do all the things that Chris never got to do, you know? And so by then in my career, I just started saying yes to everything. I mean, I had an agent in LA. I was
mm-hmm.
auditioning for videos.
Mm-hmm.
I said yes to being artistic director. And then finally, my team kept saying, Anna, let's throw a competition, And I remember I'd said no to it a few times before because I didn't have any experience in it. I've
Yeah,
never
yeah.
I don't have a business degree. I never thrown an event. And I'm like, why are you guys asking me to do this?
Something about you.
Yeah. And so when Chris passed away, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's do it, And we were also losing our center at the time. And so I figured, okay, maybe if we can raise some ticket money for this, it will help extend another year of rent, whatever. But this is how I planned for this, okay? Bustagroove, right? I asked my friend, I said, hey, Nat, you want to help me plan this event? And the only reason why I asked her is because her boyfriend was a DJ, right? And that was it. That was my only planning experience. And then the rest of it was my team. I said, hey, you guys want to just ask a bunch of crews they want to, help out and want to do it? Okay, cool. And then, this other girl was like volunteering. She was like, oh yeah, well, my friend works at this flyer place. Maybe he can help make a flyer, so it was just kind of like a team kind of pitch in where you can effort. And the day came and man, we did not know what the fuck we were doing. Like we ordered this stage and it was shaky and teams had to stand on it. And so my friend was like, yo, Kaba, can you just like do it on the floor? There's too many of you, because we didn't want them to,
Yeah,
and then,
yeah.
and then for tech, it was just, you're just playing a tape deck. And we were like trying to like play it off because we were all girls. We were like, so if the music didn't play, we were like stalling, like, oh, I don't know what the fuck, I don't know what's happening. Tell them something, give an
Oh my
excuse,
God.
And so I'd be like, oh, you guys can run it again, right? But then in the meantime, they're like, shit, how do you do this? And then
Oh.
the power went off. And then Lisa is Belle's sister. She was helping me. She's like, Anna, there's no power. I said, oh my God, well, what can we do? She was like, we can rent a power generator. I said, okay, do we have enough ticket money? She goes, yeah, but it's not our money. I said, I don't care, use it. Because we
Dang.
used the ticket money to rent a power generator, and then we ended up having the show. But it was so fun. It was like the funnest event ever. We met so many dope like crews. Like that was the first year. I mean, when they weren't called Jabbawockeez yet. I mean, it was a mixture of Mind Tricks and Kaboom
Mm-hmm.
Squad,
Yep.
Mind Over Matter, you know, Kaba, Pac Modern, Team Millennia, 220. There was all these 909, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the first time the Bay, LA, and San Diego came together, you know. Yeah. And it was only 300 people that showed up, but even after, nobody wanted to go home. Everybody stayed until like 1, 2 in the morning, just
Oh
kind of
my God.
sessioning. And then my friend was like, hey, are we going to do this next year? And I was like, yeah, we're going to do this every year.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Just the feeling of it and looking around, I just loved it. And just knowing it kind of felt like my friend's kind of like spirit was watching over kind of
Mm.
thing.
Yeah.
So in a way, you know, we were doing this show also to kind of keep that alive, you know, that spirit of being together and dancing till all hours of the morning. Yeah, it was really, really community. Like that's where I learned it.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
one, if you could talk about so that initial just kind of throwing this together and having to rent like a stage and putting this together. And this was outside, right? This was
Oh no, we threw it inside. So the space that we had when Culture Shock used to be a training academy.
uh-huh.
Yeah, we had a huge kind of like space. Like the ceiling was as tall as an airport hangar. It was in
Yes, yes.
the NTC base. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So we were able to put it inside, and we just rented some fold out chairs and a stage. And my friend's boyfriend, who was the DJ, played the music.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, that was it.
I love it. And so, if you can talk about two things, one, kind of transitioning to when you were first able to bring at the time Bustagroove to the theater, and then
Mhm.
second thing, if you can talk a little bit about maybe that name change because I don't even know. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
So we'll get into deep shit. I don't even know if half an hour is enough. But okay. So,
Let's
anyways,
do it.
now the theater idea was Angie's idea, honestly. And
Mm-hmm.
Angie said that we should put it in the theater because she was looking to elevate the status of how hip hop dance was seen.
Mm,
She was saying that, hey, this is just as good after because she wasn't even there. She wasn't
yeah.
even there for the first Bustagroove. But after she saw the video, she was like, wow, this is better than like any modern dance show I've seen, any ballet. Like
Yeah.
it's comparable. So
You're
she
trying to
goes,
legitimize it, like putting
yeah.
this in the theater. Yep.
So it was her idea to rent the East County Performing Arts the second year. And so
Mm-hmm.
we were there. We were there for a few years. And really, like, we still treated the teams the same. We would all kind of hang out in a tent in the back.
Yeah.
Everybody could eat. The shirts used to be free. You know, we used
You
to give
used to be
free
free.
shirts, free shirts to everybody, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But we always let the dancers watch for free because we knew
Mm-hmm.
you're the reason why we have the show, you know.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense that you're going to pay and you're going to do the show. No. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, so yeah, so that was the reason why we continued to have it in a theater. And then also, I loved it because it grew our audience. So people that were like hella kind of like rich white collar people, like
Mm-hmm.
really got to meet our community. And then I
Yeah.
would get like comments like, wow, those kids are really good. They're really
Yeah.
respectful. And I'm like, duh, you
Yeah.
know? And it was nice. They were saying, wow, everyone was so polite and well behaved. And I'm like, what did you think? You know, like it
Yeah.
was so nuts to hear those kind of comments. But yeah, so we grew a relationship with the theaters. And so here's the sad part, like in running this team, like mind you, I've been doing the artistic side of it, like the gigs and everything, getting everyone ready for the shows. And then now I'm also doing events. I was not only doing Bustagroove, but I also did a showcase. So I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
presenting 2 shows a year, plus
Yeah.
I'm running the team, and I was broke. Mind you, you know, like I was just doing too much. I was out of balance.
Yeah.
And in my 20s, like I really was like, wow, this is not right. I'm fucking hungry, you know, and
Mm.
I'm doing all this stuff. Everybody thinks I'm a legend. No, it doesn't even make sense, you know?
Yeah.
And I had to quit, but I didn't have the communication or the emotional skills to kind of confront that because I loved Culture Shock so much. I didn't want to
Yeah.
leave, you know?
Yeah.
And Angie loved me too, so it was hard for her. And she came at me crazy. She just came at me crazy. And we've already talked about this, you know,
Yeah.
we've already smoothed it out and everything. But at the time when I left, I told her I was quitting and she was so hurt. She just, you
What
know,
year was this, if I may ask?
2003.
Hmm.
2003 was my
Okay.
last year directing. And I had told her and the team that I was going to quit, but I didn't even say why. I didn't even say a goodbye. Like, that's how
Oh
hurtful.
shoot. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was just
Yeah.
one of those, like, this bitch is leaving us, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah. And so Angie just kind of like, she was really raging at me. And I remember it because she said it to me, but she probably doesn't remember she said it to me. She goes, "You're gonna leave, and you think you're gonna take Bustagroove? Well, Bustagroove is nothing. You don't have a business." She said, "Bustagroove is just a fucking game." And so I was like on the verge of tears because this was like my mentor.
Yeah.
And so I just looked at her and I asked her to sign the paperwork, which is basically to give me the rights because, you know, anything you do, it still belongs to the company if you're an independent contractor, right?
Yeah.
And so out of pride, and I think a lot of hurt, but it was probably the best thing she ever did, like for me. She signed that shit and she was like, go ahead, let's see. So she got to keep the rights to showcase and I kept Bustagroove. And the next year, because I just felt so much like, I don't want to keep this kind of bitter, sad energy, we decided to change the name to Body Rock, you know? Yeah. And that was history. After that, it was just history.
So that's 2004,
Oh, sorry.
2003.
Oh,
For the,
yeah.
the name change now.
Sorry. So 2003, I quit. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry. It took me a while, but 2005, I finally parted ways and I took Bustagroove with me. I think so. 2004 was my last year Bustagroove,
Yeah.
and then 2005 became Body Rock, or 2005 was the last Bustagroove, and 2006 became Body Rock. I think that's what it was.
There it
But
is.
yes, yeah. So, anyways, um, it was just this whole like, man, you put so much, invest so much. And she didn't know, you know, I totally give grace to her because when she's running a nonprofit, she's definitely not thinking that we're going to stay there forever. She's not
Yeah.
thinking that
Yeah.
she's going to have to think of our salaries. We used to all do this for free. No directors got paid.
Mm-hmm.
There was no board of directors,
Yep.
nothing, you know? And
Yep.
after I left, thank God, things changed and they got a board of directors and they were able to pay everyone. Yeah.
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 Well, thank you
Yeah.
for that history lesson. For those that didn't know, and me included for that particular
Yeah.
detail, thank you for that insight. Um, kind of getting, you taking us through your dance narrative and just the surface level of it, and it's so awesome to hear all these things. I think kind of focusing a little bit more on the now and specifically, Anna, with you, and I take a lot of pride in this, but if you can just share with us a little bit about your own space and Boba Talks.
Oh,
And I don't know if you remember, but you, me, and Shama Mihe had kind of one of the more first unofficial ones at Culture Shock at the time. And still so much pride in that. I remember you kind of told me after, I was like, well, that's pretty damn cool. So if you could just talk a little bit about one, what was the inspiration for creating that space? And two, what's that journey been like for you?
man, I think uh, if I really have to reflect, I think it's also because I was already going to school to become a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of transitioning out of just being or seeing myself as a director and dancer and just these conversations.
Yeah.
And we will always be having them. Like, it's a
Yeah.
typical dancer thing. If you're in San Diego, you get boba, you start talking about deep shit. Like we always do that. We're always, and you're always asking for advice, and you're like one of my little brothers, and yeah, and just kind of connecting it that like, wow, yeah, I think younger gen people don't really have like a place where they can connect to older people.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I don't want to do it in a weird formal like therapy way. Maybe it'd be cool if we just kind of like reached them and at their level, which is like,
Mm.
oh, okay, we're just having boba. And and everybody back then was already doing these kind of like podcasty things,
Yeah.
and I swear, Kevin, it was just kind of like I just listened to intuition, just kind of like, let's just do this. My friend Mappy, I was in the Bay and I said, hey Mappy, can you help me film this? my phone sucks. Can you just use your phone? Dude, I forgot that Mappy was a professional videographer.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And he was like, Sarao, I'm going to hook you up. He had two professional cameras and he helped me to practice. He was like, what's your tagline? You're going to practice your intro. Come on, what is it? I was like, my name's Anna and I love friends and chilling with the homies and I love Boba. And he was like, no, Sarah, come on, you gotta practice it. You gotta practice it. So like he like hella professionally like did this thing for me that I thought we were just gonna like, okay, let's just do, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I was just not even, you know, really serious about it. But yeah, after that it was really received well and I had fun. I had fun doing it. So I continued to interview people. I invested in a camera because Mappy lives in the Bay, you know, so I can't
Yeah.
always call him. But yeah, so I was, you know, you were with me. Sometimes I do it
Yeah,
in my
yeah.
car.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Uh,
yeah, it's just really fun.
so yes, absolutely. And we're gonna link, in the description, where to find you and all that stuff. So definitely have to check out Anna Sarao's Boba Talks. They are super awesome. And having done one myself, I'm like, it just feels like conversation, which is the best thing. It doesn't feel like, oh, we're trying to do something here. And hopefully feel the same way with this.
Yes.
Um, and I think just, kind of one, Anna, just you sharing your narrative and being so transparent about, many moments of vulnerability and, just you navigating through everything with dance and with, strict Filipino parents and growing up south side of San Diego. So many things to the person that you are and who you've become. I just kind of wanted to, culminate and wrap everything. And I wanted to ask you, if you could say anything to your 13-year-old self, what would you say?
Oh, good question. I would probably remind her that you have a calling and that you are called to do this more than you know. And don't separate the failure from success, that you're going to have to overcome a lot of things on this life or this journey, you know, in order to make it. Yeah.
Super simple, but really profound. Um, Anna, I just want to say, number one, thank you for giving me your time today and your wealth of knowledge. And hopefully down the line that we can do a check in and follow up with you and see how things are going. And I think with it just being the first few months of COVID, it's been tough, but I know that we're all going to continue to evolve and adjust. So I just want to say thank you again for giving us your time today and for just being so transparent with your narrative. And I'm looking forward to catching you on the next time.
Yes. And thank you for having me. You know, I'm so proud of you ever since you were little. I always look at you as little Kevin. So,
I think
yeah.
we what was it 2000? We met in 2000. I was
Yeah.
on formality at that time, so
Yeah.
it's crazy to say that we have known each other for literally 2 decades, and so it's pretty incredible to for you to have given me a space to share, and now it just comes full circle. So I always I regard you as one of the most genuine people I know, and this was a super special one. So hopefully you had a good time on this today,
Yes.
and we're looking
Yes.
forward to having you back soon. Okay,
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
thank you, Anna. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye, guys.